Hey guys, good morning. How is everybody? Okay, I just wanted to touch base on a couple things that are happening. One, I have been really listening to Jordan Hall, former tech guy, absolutely brilliant man, and I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and he accepted my friend request. So we'll see if anything comes of that. But my purpose for reaching out to him is I've been trying to reach people where they're at for a long time. I've been trying to preach in my own awkward way, and it's all been a massive learning curve for me. And uh, I'm at the end. Um, I'm at the end of my waiting period, if you will. I have been trying to reach out to various people. I've reached out to the Canadian government, the new artificial intelligence division. I have reached out to his friend John Vervicki. I have reached out to Jordan Peterson, who, by the way, can you please keep him in your prayers? He's not doing well, and I think that Jordan Peterson has been one of the single most important people in the world in getting people to kind of like realize that there is more going on than we thought in this whole mechanized version of reality that we were living in for the last, I would argue, several decades, and probably more than a century. At least most of us in the kind of like secular Western world sphere, the developed world, and we have this way of looking at the world as if it's just a giant machine that you feed humans into, and it automatically pumps out prosperity and good things. This and that people are interchangeable, and that the ideas that they hold inside don't matter. And what really matters is just like the economy and having proper management and efficiency and all this. The way that we think about things has really led us to a place, a moment in time that there appears to be, at least to my eyes, an explosion of people realizing that something does not make sense. There's things happening that they're just not adding up. In particular, um, I just watched yesterday morning I watched a video with Chris Martinson and another guy on that X journalist, the guy that for whatever reason he's very popular. I've never really understood it myself. Um, Please bear with me for a second here. How's everybody today? Having a good day? Um, I'm gonna say some stuff that you know I feel guilty sometimes because I feel like I am, when I talk to people about the things that have been going on in my head personally since, well, I mean, for a while, but especially things that accelerated starting in approximately March of 2020 with the COVID pandemic. And I just kept trying to make sense of it. And, and the world has really, I mean, just the amount of kind of like revelations and things that have been happening, like specifically the fact that in Congress right now they're literally debating the legacy of the vaccination programs. And you know, I'm not going to go down too many. I have a tendency to go all over the place on tangents, but I'm going to try to keep myself relatively together on this one. The guy I was talking about is Mario Newfall, and he had Chris Martinson, who's a very smart guy and analyst, and this other guy who is clearly a marksman or a gun guy of some kind. But the three of them were debating, what do we know and what don't we know about the Charlie Kirk shooting, which was 2 weeks ago, and the only thing that seems clear about that is that it's not clear at all, and it sure doesn't look like the thing that seems the most clear is that the guy that they've got, um, Tyler, I think his name is. there's no way that he could have done it. Like, there's just there's too many problems with the official narrative, including the fact that they're trying to get us to buy the official narrative. And it led me down a path of trying to understand. I was well aware of Charlie and well aware of the kinds of things that he was doing and Turning Point and all that kind of stuff. But I don't put all my faith in any particular actor. I like to go out there and listen to all kinds of, like, even people I don't like. I like to listen to, as long as they're smart, right? As long as they're saying something really good. It's my same philosophy of music. I like all genres as long as it's good. Like, and there's good stuff and there's bad stuff in every genre, and there's good stuff and there's bad stuff in every religion and every philosophy and every everything. Okay, like, it's about learning to extract the important stuff out of the world and make sense of it in a way that can hopefully help other people or entertain other people or something like that. The point is that it led me down a path of really trying to understand what Charlie was about and what he wasn't about. And I don't know if you all are keeping as abreast of this as I am, but Candace Owens, who has been under attack because of the way that she has been so bulldoggedly going after this thing. And the wild part about it is, on social media you see all of these people that are just like 100% behind Israel no matter what it does. And by the way, I'm not saying, I'm talking ideas, okay? I'm not there in Gaza. I have no idea what's going on. And I don't go searching for stuff that appeals to my emotions about it. I go for stuff that actually seems to connect dots. And, like, so Piers Morgan, I like to watch Piers Morgan's channel, and he had on Abby Martin and this guy from the IDF spokesman, and, like, the way that these people are just presenting two alternate worlds, it's stunning. I mean, it's wild that immediately, in the same way that after October 7th, and this is something I've been trying to really hone in on with my last few Substack posts, this idea of radicalism. And this is something I brought up, but I forgot to kind of like flesh it out on my live stream yesterday morning. Was I was on the like, I swear, on the day of October 7th, I opened up social media, Facebook. I wasn't using X that much back then, but I opened up Facebook, and I was shocked at the amount of people that were saying that it was all Israel did it, like Israel doing it to itself, or that it was revenge for the way that they've been treating the Palestinians, or the Gazans more specifically, but really just basically the people that live in Israel. And let's just be perfectly honest. Like, look, I don't have a dog in this fight. My only dog in this fight is actually, I want peace. and I want the fighting to stop, and I want people to stop dying, like Donald Trump would say. I just want people to stop dying. And I was shocked at the amount of people that were, like, really radicalized at that moment, like October 7th, and people just, all the things that have been happening with COVID and masks and tests and all the other stuff that I've been trying to make sense of up until that point. Who was right? Who was wrong? Where do rights come from? All those kinds of things, all those divisions just blew up on October 7th. And people just doubled, tripled, quadrupled down. And the people that quadrupled down on this idea that Israel deserved it, they have become like rabid. And a lot of people are noticing this connection between leftist kind of sentimentality, which I called like French Enlightenment leftism, where it's like being free from all gods. You are escaping all gods and rulers on this earth. It's very anarchic, and it leads to blood and death and destruction. And then there's the more English slash Scottish slash American Enlightenment, where it was like, no, we embrace God, uh, specifically Jesus, and they were basically, I mean, the people that came over, they were kind of a Puritan flavor. This is why this matters, because when we're talking about Judeo-Christian values, which is what the people that are constantly saying, no, 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 Israel is a Western country in the Middle East surrounded by enemies, it's kind of factually true. It kind of is. But they're surrounded by a hostile belief system. Again, I'm not saying anything about any individual people. I want to make this perfectly clear, okay? I'm just talking about people act out the things that they believe. And I've been saying this over and over again. And when you act out that you just want to be free from everything, including in this case, uh, the trials and tribulations of just being a human being, and you want to be free from all rulers, that can lead to a Luciferian impulse. And this is something that I've been trying to point out for a long time. Interestingly enough, there was this podcast the other day that Tucker did, Tucker Carlson, who is doing really some of the best stuff out there. He did a podcast with a guy who, oh my gosh, what was his name? I'm so sorry. See, I do all this stuff off the cuff. I actually just wanted to read something for you from this book. Wait, I can't do the mirror thing now. It's called How the Scots Invented the Modern World. But let me just, you know what? Here's what I'll do. I hope you can bear with me. I know I do apologize. I'm not very polished at all, but I mean well. So he did this one called The Occult Kabbalah and the Antichrist's Newest Manifestation. Here's the secret trick my groomer uses. Sorry, there's one of those ads. Do you guys get these super weird AI ads all the time now? They're just like bizarre. The Occult Kabbalah and the Antichrist's Newest Manifestation and How to Avoid the Mark of the Beast. It's got almost 2 million views. It was on October 3rd. And Conrad Flynn, that's his name. Conrad Flynn was on Tucker, and they discussed some kind of threads that I have been pulling on throughout my Substack, like themes that I've been pulling on throughout my Substack for at least the last year. And again, it's this Luciferianism. It's this the two enlightenments. It's all these things that are going on that kind of like led to where we are right now. And where we are right now is a place where I think a lot of people are really, they don't know how to make sense of anything. But the reason I bring up the Tucker podcast is because he name dropped this guy, Nick Land, who's a philosopher, and a philosopher that I'm just starting to get familiar with him. But just this morning in my YouTube feed, there was this from a YouTube channel called The Dangerous Maybe. So far, it's got only 12,105 views. This was yesterday. It says Nick Land responds to Tucker Carlson. And God bless Nick. I mean, he really tries to be charitable with the conversation that was largely about him on the Tucker Carlson podcast. And he's saying that, like, you know, it's what he's like, I'd never seen it this way. They kind of like made me really think about the kind of stuff that I've been writing all along about, like this Luciferianism and Gnosticism and all these kind of threads that all seem to be swirling and twirling around the world right now. And I recommend, first of all, you watch the Tucker Carlson podcast, because that's a lot of the stuff that I've been identifying, and then watch the Nick Land response, because my jaw was on the floor the whole time. I'm like, holy cow. Like this, he's like, it's like they're just starting, like, and so there's two co-hosts, and there's this guy, Nick Land. And I think I don't really know enough about it to speak in an educated way. I'm just trying to learn a lot of stuff as quickly as I possibly can absorb it. But he says at one point, it's kind of they say, oh, the take one of the hosts says, oh, this whole thing was kind of postmodern, and Nick says, no, it's postmodern. And I commented below, I'm like, yeah, it's postmodern, as in post human, transhuman, which apparently is the thing that Nick Land promotes, which is what this guy's talking about in the podcast, Conrad. And he connects it all to Satanism and Luciferianism. And these guys start the podcast kind of like laughing it off. And then Nick Land basically says, "Yeah, a lot of it was right." And you can kind of see like there's just, so when I speak to people, I feel like I'm talking to people and I connect threads for them in such a way that they go, what? Because I'm so random and all over the place. But trust me, I'm trying to tell the truth. The capital T truth, the logos truth. The truth that started with Jesus Christ and the way that he built the modern world, the world that we live in, the world that is currently under attack. And it's really wild to listen to somebody who's actually intelligent talk about this stuff. Jordan Hall, and I reached out to him, and I'm hoping that I can get in contact with him, because all I really want to do is learn and help other people learn. That's all I want to do. And the world is changing rapidly, and I think a lot of people are not ready for it. I started doing a Substack piece this morning because there was, I wonder if this isn't live streaming, it's recording. I started doing a Substack piece this morning because I read something on LinkedIn about how AI, or this kind of like AI revolution that we're being promised, is not panning out the way that people that had thought it was going to. So there's a lot of people that went into this whole like, convert your business into AI and we'll help you do it. We have the experts in this kind of stuff, and we're going to automate all your processes. And the article was about the fact that they're not delivering on their promises, and people are basically, like they're kiboshing it. They're jumping out. They don't want to be. They're like, okay, you know what? This is all hype. It's stupid. It's, call it an AI bubble. Call it whatever. So I'm writing about that because people are not understanding that what's happening is spiritual. And I don't mean like in the literal sense, but I do. And it's really hard to wrap your head around that. And when I'm listening to Jordan Hall explain it, I'm like, man, this guy's so smart and so together. But I haven't finished this one podcast I'm listening to. I have to finish it, so I'm going to decline to comment further right now. But I reached out to him because I'm hoping that he can help me and I can help him, because we are really kind of like in a bad place financially, and right when we're in this bad place financially, I'm going, man, I'm just seeing all this stuff I try to get people to see, and I've been writing about for months, is all coming to a head, and it makes me feel weird. Like I said to my wife yesterday, we went for a little drive, and I said to her, in the last couple of days, because our finances are coming to this place, and it is what it is, and I feel like I've been trying to tell people all this stuff that's happening, like ahead of it happening, so that we can maybe do something, divert to the worst possible consequences of all this stuff, which seem inevitable at this point if we don't do something. And so instead of getting out there and looking for a job, I mean, I need a hip replacement. So, I mean, that's something that's kind of kept me out of doing just like plain labor work, because it's really painful. And, I'm such an idiot. I should apply for disability. But instead, I've kind of thrown myself into trying to get people to see what I see and why I see it that way. And a lot of people I see out there in the kind of like alternative community are very conspiratorial, because there are a lot of dots that you can connect, but they don't necessarily tell you something, which I keep trying to get people to understand, that we are not the judge, right? We're not the judge of what's in another person's soul. We can look at events that are happening And it can be really unsettling. And a lot of people just shy away from it. They get like cognitive dissonance. They just don't want to connect things, and they don't want to think about things in terms of there is a material world and a metaphysical world, and they're real, and they are kind of colliding right now. And that's what AI is. People just think it's a new technology. It's not just a new technology. A lot of people will say it's kind of like an alien life form that we created. Oh, we created a sentient life form. And there's a lot of people that are worshiping it already. Whereas I don't think one of the things that Conrad said to Tucker was this whole idea of the mark of the beast and attached it to Bitcoin and blockchain, and these things are all very. And this is the kind of stuff that Nick Lamb was saying. Well, that's all kind of true. I just haven't really thought about it like that. And it's hard to get people to actually understand that there is something kind of like what was predicted in the Bible all happening at once. And about that, it can be terrifying. But our place is not, as Christians, and I'm a Christian, of what denomination, I am not sure. I'm thinking probably close to Episcopalian at this point, because it's like a mixture between Roman Catholicism and Protestantism. But there is another version of Christianity called dispensationalism. A lot of the evangelists in the United States are dispensationalists, and so I want people to consider something, that there are things at play in the world that are outside of our understanding. And when it comes to what happened with Charlie Kirk, a lot of people, the same way that after October 7th, there were a lot of people just kind of like said, no, Israel did it to themselves. Look, they've been funding Hamas. They've been doing all this. Okay, okay, okay. And, Netanyahu's not doing himself any favors in saying we're battling Amalek. But these are all biblical references, okay? And there's two kinds of Zionism. One of them was basically responsible for the creation of Israel in the first place, or the reinstantiation or the restoration of Israel. And the British had a big hand in it. But it's not like again, people are, they want to pass judgment. They want to say he's the bad guy. He's the one that did it. Because it gives them, I think, comfort to think that, again, it's the scapegoating thing. It's the Girardian scapegoating thing. You need a scapegoat to point at. And a lot of people are pointing at Peter Thiel and saying he's the Antichrist. I don't believe that at all, actually. But I think that he's a lot smarter than most people are. And I'm seeing like the kind of conspiracy theorist, alternative media types pointing fingers and trying to figure out, is he the bad guy? Is Nick Land the bad guy? Is Peter Thiel the bad guy? Is Elon Musk the bad guy? And I did in my Substack post yesterday, I put a clip from Jane Goodall, God bless her, who was like, oh, if I could, I would take one of Elon Musk's rocket ships and I'd put Elon and Trump and all these people on it, and I'd shoot them into space. And I'm like, so that's the kind of like rebellion, bloodthirsty spirit. Because if you don't think shooting a person off into like the black infinity of space is not, like, if you don't think that's a sociopathic thing to say, like, and people speak passionately a lot of times about things that they believe in, but I mean, that was like basically saying I want them dead, right? I wish that someone would kill them or shoot them off the planet or something. And like, this is like in March, I think, of this year. She's passed since, so God bless her, and I hope rest her soul. But I don't think she was a bad person. She just believed in the kind of like evolutionary story. Wholeheartedly, she thought that she was an ape. She thought that you're an ape, I'm an ape. I don't necessarily buy that narrative, although I'm open to it. See, I don't say anything is set in stone. The only thing that is set in stone to me is the Logos and what Jesus taught us. Judge not, lest you be judged. Let who is without sin cast the first stone. The entire concept of forgiveness was what rooted the Christian message into Western society and became the freest, most prosperous country in the world, which was the United States. And a lot of people are, they're trying to say, oh, the founding fathers were colonialists, and they call Israel colonialist. And so everybody thinks in these kind of like really simplistic terms about really complicated things. Excuse me. But that's not helping anyone. It is interesting that pointing to Nick Land opened Nick Land's own eyes, I think. And the way he received it was just, I mean, stellar. I mean, wow. Impressive. And so I'm so sorry. I keep trying not to jump around these threads, but the point is that Zionism was a big part of what started Israel, but it wasn't the whole story. Zionism is a big part of Christian evangelicalism, but it's not the whole story. But there are certain actors that are connected to the military industrial complex. And that military industrial complex is also connected to the bio industrial complex, like the giant pharma beast. And we could trace that back. So you go back to the vaccine thing, and it's like none of these people thought they were doing anything intentionally harmful when they did it. But it turns out that there might have been a lot of consequences to just kind of like forcing people to take stuff that they maybe didn't need to take. And let me just read a couple pages for you from this book, because I want people to know Nick Land says, he says something interesting, which is that, like, we don't need to go back to the Salem witch trials, or he referred to the idea of like burning, or the fear that he has of this kind of like Christian backlash, which is real. I'm seeing a lot of people say things like it's okay to hate. Jordan Hall in particular is saying he has the warrior gene. I probably have it too, brother. I wrote a series called Occam's Sword way back months ago now, but he was talking about how you need to wield the sword of truth, and the sword of truth, in my opinion, comes from knowing Jesus Christ, and that he wanted us all to realize that he's the judge. We're not the judge, so we need to stop being so judgmental. And from the Giants protests that took place in England, led by Tommy Robinson, that and like the flag. I had said to my wife in the car, over the past couple of days, I've had like what I can only call anxiety attacks, where I'm just like, the world is so cartoonish and crazy right now, and everybody's pretending like they don't see it, but they do, right? Going yesterday on Monday, I went to the Catholic church that I attended my entire youth. On a Monday, it was full. On a Monday morning, 9 a.m. mass. People are coming back to church in a big way because that's the only thing that makes sense in our Western context. And then there's other people that are marauding through the streets, threatening to burn down Israel. I mean, it's like, it could not be more stark that what is happening is this polarization of people that believe different kinds of truths. And I would put that between belief in the one God that makes it all make sense, or belief in the many gods that want you to go to war. And those many gods operate not like a prince, but a principality. The scatterer, the, like literally his one name for the devil was the scatterer. And then people look at it like as if it's just this silly, dusty old novel, and it was just like a fairy tale or whatever. And maybe there's some truth. I don't know. I wasn't there, but I know that the one thing that is true is that for the world to be a better place, it needs Jesus right now. That's true. That's not up for debate, because Jesus would tell you that vengeance is his and his alone. And it's not up to us to try to right wrongs or whatever. But, one of the things Jane Goodall said is, and I said this to my wife. So she's like, well, what's causing your anxiety attacks? And I said, I cannot help but feel, I just turned 51 this summer, but ever since turning 50, because of the way that my life has gone and the way that I've been writing things and the way that I've been connecting dots for people, I hope, and getting them to come back to Christ is sorry, there's a message popped up on my computer. The way I've been trying to get them to come back to Christ is by just well, first of all, I was a little judgy before, but and I was pointing at people and saying, these are the bad guys. And then I started to realize, no. It's not our place to judge. It's just our place to have the conversation. And I've been trying to have the conversation, and it feels like it's been very one way. And I only have to hope, because another thing Jordan Hall said was that, sometimes God calls you for his purpose right when he needs you. And in the meantime, he's sharpening you like his weapon. And I can only hope that's what I've been doing, is getting sharper, so that if a moment were to come, I would be ready. But at the same time, this kind of like isolation from everybody else and being able to actually connect with other people intellectually has made me feel like the world is like a show, like the Truman Show or something. It feels surreal. But the only thing that I know that anchors me back in the truth is, again, Jesus Christ and reading the Bible. But I said to my wife, I can't help but feel that, like, there's, they say that before you're about to die, sometimes you'll get all of your affairs in order. And what I've been doing really is repenting and trying to get my affairs in order and saying I'm a bad person. I've been praying all the time. It feels like it's not paying off. And I feel like I've thrown everything into it, because I really have. And it feels like it's not paying off, but all I'm trying to do is help people. All I'm trying to do is help people see that when they are turning on one another, they're doing the work of the devil. They're not doing the work of Jesus. And so Jesus would try to get you to think about things differently. He would tell you a parable. He would try to relate to people where they were at. And I want to relate to everybody. I want to relate to the Zionists. I want to relate to the atheists and the Gnostics and the transhumanists. I want to talk to everybody about what it is we're talking about right here. The AI accelerationists. And Nick brought up something interesting too that I had written about in a 5-piece Substack I did before, when I was talking about this idea of another realm existing that you can access through DMT and what that could possibly mean. And I also talk about the alien thing because, if you don't try to tie all these threads together, it can seem discombobulating, but there is a thread. There's a thread. There is one connective tissue that makes it all make sense, and that is Jesus Christ, right? But the anxiety attacks that I've been having are because, I don't know, I just kind of feel abandoned, and it's like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Like, I think that most people that I meet all think I'm a really nice guy. That even though I'm usually making arguments that I'm not trying to be aggressive, but I bring up things people don't really kind of understand at all. And that I'm not even sure I understand it all, but I've been trying to understand, and that throws people off. And so nobody can ever keep up with me in a conversation. And that drives me crazy because I'm only trying to have a conversation with like every single person I meet at this point. I'm like evangelizing. So this book, How the Scots Invented the Modern World, tells the story of Well, it says the true story of how Western Europe's poorest nation created our world and everything in it. And it starts off talking about Scotland as the New Jerusalem, and this guy, um, Knox, John Knox, who was a hardcore Protestant reformer and very smart guy, and how through his efforts he basically modernized Scotland to such a place that the people of Scotland were like the best and the brightest around. Like he brought free schooling. He wanted everybody to have schooling so that they could read the Bible on their own, that it wouldn't come through the church. He basically got the Catholic Church and the Roman, the feudal way that the Roman Catholic Church was connected to the Vatican, and he pushed it out of Scotland and back into England, and it nearly killed the Scots. But the story is fascinating, and I was not aware of this. And I've had this book for at least a couple of years, and there's just so many books that I keep picking up and putting down. But this one seems really important. So you need to understand that there's a difference between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant break. And there's even the differences there's so many divisions in the church, it's really difficult to make sense of. But it was that version, Protestantism, the idea that citizens, all citizens, should be responsible for their country, is what really kind of boosted the American Enlightenment version I was talking about, in opposition to the French, which was the Luciferian spirit. This one was more about giving everything to God. And I want to just read one part here. You know what? We'll just read these couple of pages. Just as the German Reformation was largely the work of a single individual, Martin Luther, so the Scottish Reformation was the achievement of one man of heroic will and tireless energy, John Knox. Like Luther, Knox left an indelible mark on his national culture. Uncompromising, dogmatic, and driven, John Knox was a prolific writer and a preacher of truly terrifying power. His early years as a Protestant firebrand had been spent in exile, imprisonment, and even penal servitude, chained to a rowing bench in the king's galleys. So he was not very fond of England. But he was wildly religious. So in the same way that he wanted to throw off rulers, but he wanted to be ruled by God. So we'll get to that. The harsh trials toughened him physically and spiritually for what was to come. He became John Knox, quote, he who feared the face of no man. Beginning in 1559, Knox single-handedly inspired, intimidated, and bullied Scotland's nobility and urban classes into overthrowing the Catholic Church of their forebears and adopting the religious creed of Geneva's John Calvin. Its austere and harsh dogmas, that the Bible was the literal word of God, that the God of the Bible was a stern and jealous God, filled with wrath at all sinners and blasphemers, and that the individual soul was by God's grace predestined to heaven or hell, regardless of any good works or charitable intentions. That's a point of contention, but were themselves natural extensions of Knox's own personality. Calvinism seemed as natural to him as breathing, as he taught a generation of Scotsmen to believe the same thing themselves. Above all, John Knox wanted to turn the Scots into God's chosen people and Scotland into the New Jerusalem. To do this, Knox was willing to sweep away everything about Scotland's past that linked it to the Catholic Church. As one admirer said, others sniped at the branches of popery, but he strikes at the roots to destroy the whole. He and his followers scoured away not only Scottish Catholicism, but all its physical manifestations, from monasteries and bishops and clerical vestments to holy relics and market square crosses. They smashed stained glass windows and saints' statues, ripped out choir stalls and rood screens, I don't know what that is, and overturned altars. All of these symbols of centuries old tradition to religious culture, which we would call the great works of art, were for Knox marks of idolatry and, sorry, this is a really uncomfortable way to read, and the synagogue of Satan, as he called the Roman Catholic Church. In any case, the idols disappeared from southern Scotland, and the Scottish Kirk rose up to take their place. So it was basically like it was their cathedral, the Kirk. Knox and his lieutenants also imposed the new rules of the Calvinist Sabbath on Scottish society. No working. People could be arrested for plucking a chicken on Sunday. No dancing and no playing of the pipes. Gambling, card playing, and theater were banned. No one could move out of a parish without written permission from the minister. The Kirk wiped out all traditional forms of collective fun, such as carnival, Maytime celebrations, mumming, and passion plays. Fornication brought punishment and exile. Adultery meant death. The church courts or Kirk sessions enforced the law with scourges, pillories, branks, a padlocked a brank is a padlocked iron helmet that forced on an iron plate into the mouth of a convicted liar or blasphemer, ducking stools, banishment, and in the case of witches or those possessed by the devil, burning at the stake. So when you're this zealous, things can happen. But it happened in the French Revolution in such a way that they never really fixed anything. It's a bunch of goofballs. But created a kind of like a Luciferian spirit. Whereas you'll see what the fruits of this guy's labor are. The faithful received one single compensation for this harsh authoritarian regime, and it was a powerful one: direct access to God. The rite of communion, receiving the body and blood of Christ in the form of wine and bread, now belonged to everyone, rich and poor, young and old, men and women. In the Catholic Church, the Bible had been literally a closed book. Now anyone who could read or listen to someone else read could absorb the Word of God. On Sundays, the church rafters rang with the singing of psalms and recitations from the Gospel. The Lord's Supper became a community festival with quantities, sometimes plentiful, of red wine and shortcake. John Knox presided over one such Sunday communion where the congregation consumed 8.5 gallons of claret, kind of wine. I'm probably saying it wrong. The congregation was the center of everything. It elected its own board of elders and presbyters. It even chose its minister. The congregation's board of elders, the consistory, cared for the poor and sick. It fed and clothed the community's orphans. Girls who were too poor to have a dowry to tempt a prospective husband got one from the consistory. It was more than just fear of the ducking stool or the stake that bound the Kirk together. It was a community united by its commitment to God and its sense of chosenness. God loveth us, John Knox had written, because we are his own handiwork. To a large extent, Knox's mission to create the New Jerusalem in Scotland succeeded. The Reformation laid down strong roots in the Scottish lowlands, the belt of the fertile land of river valleys running from the Firth of Clyde to Glasgow, and Glasgow, in the extreme west to just north of Carlisle and Hadrian's Wall across to Edinburgh and Berwick on Tweed in the east. North of this, in the beautiful but barren, sparsely populated Highlands, its record was more spotty. But in all the areas that came under his influence, the Kirk created a new society on the image of Knox's utopian ideal. It had turned its back not only on Scotland's past, but on all purely secular values, no matter what the source. Knox made his view clear in one of his last letters before he died in November 1572. All worldly strength, yea, even in things spiritual, decays, and yet shall never the work of God decay. One of those pillars of worldly strength that Knox despised was political authority, or more precisely, the power of monarchs. Perhaps because Knox's closest allies were Scottish nobles who wanted to see the Scottish monarchy tamed, or because nearly every monarch he dealt with was either a child or a woman. The boy of King Edward VI of England married Queen of Scots, the Scottish regent Mary of Guise, and English queens Mary Tudor and Elizabeth I. He treated them all with impatience and contempt. Yet neither Mary of Guise nor Mary Queen of Scots could do without him. Even though they were Catholics, Knox represented a spiritual authority they needed to legitimize their own. When Queen Mary announced her plans to marry her worthless cousin, Lord Darnley, Knox gave her such a fierce public scolding that she burst into tears in full view of her court. She made the mistake of marrying Darnley anyway and set in motion the series of scandals that would finally push her off the throne. By 1570, Knox recognized that Mary no longer had any part to play in making the New Jerusalem, and he swept her aside like a useless piece from the game board. Her infant son, James VI, was installed in her place with George Buchanan, Scotland's leading humanist, as his tutor so that the boy could be raised in the Presbyterian faith. Knox and Buchanan believed that political power was ordained by God, but that the power was vested not in kings or in nobles or even in the clergy, but in the people. The Presbyterian covenant with God required them to defend that power against any interloper. Punishing idolatry and destroying tyranny was a sacred duty laid by God on the whole body of the people, Knox wrote, and of every man in his vocation. Here was a vision of politics unlike any other at the time. George Buchanan turned it into a full-fledged doctrine of popular sovereignty, the first in Europe. Buchanan came from a Stirlingshire in central Scotland at a time when it was much like the Highlands in its culture and character. In fact, Buchanan grew up speaking both Gaelic and Scots. He studied at the University of St. Andrews and then at the University of Paris alongside other future giants of the Reformation such as John Calvin and Ignatius Loyola, the later founder of the Jesuits. As a Greek and Latin scholar, Buchanan had few peers, but he was also a founding father of Scottish Presbyterianism. He served as a moderator of the Kirk's General Assembly, the only layman to ever do so, and helped write the Kirk's first book of discipline. His greatest achievement, however, was his book on the nature of political authority titled The Law of Government Among the Scots, published in 1579. I just got just a couple more. In it, Buchanan asserted that all political authority ultimately belonged to the people who came together to elect someone, whether a king or a body of magistrates, to manage their affairs. The people were always more powerful than the rulers they created. They were free to remove them at will. The people, he explained, have the right to confer the royal authority upon whomever they wish. This is the sort of view we are used to ascribing to John Locke. In fact, it belongs to a Presbyterian Scot from Stirlingshire writing more than 100 years earlier. And Buchanan went further. When the ruler or rulers failed to act in the people's interest, Buchanan wrote, then each and every citizen, even the lowest and meanest of men, had the sacred right to and duty to resist that tyrant, even to the point of killing him. Here was a powerful formula for democracy, government of the people and for the people. In the crude circumstances of the late 16th century, however, it was also an invitation to anarchy. That was what Scotland got for nearly 2 decades after Knox's death, until Mary's son, James VI, overturned his old tutor's theories and reasserted the power of the monarchy. The dream of the people as sovereign died, so the people is sovereign. It's the people who are responsible for keeping the powerful in check. I don't know when we forgot this, but not just the people, God's people. People that understand the logos, the truth, the capital T truth that came from Jesus. Those are the people who throw off tyrants, even if it's from their own. I'm just saying. It was the single most democratic system of church government in Europe. Even the minister was chosen by the congregation's consistory of elected elders instead of by some powerful aristocrat or laird. The elders also sent deputations to their local synod, who in turn sent representatives of the Kirk's General Assembly. This meant that the members of the Kirk's governing body were really the representatives of the people, in addition to being enforcers of godly discipline and propagators of the Word of God. Not surprisingly, a self-governing Kirk coexisted uneasily with the monarchs such as the Stuarts, who claimed to rule by divine right. So again, when you go back to the Catholic version of Christianity, the kings are basically like God's representatives on earth, in the same way that the Pope is infallible. And they get to say what is right and what is wrong. They're the ultimate authority. But that's not what this was. This was, unless you're a godly person, you didn't get to be in the game. And if you were not a godly person and you acted in ways that were seen as troublesome, there was like no patience for those people, which is why it created this wonderful thing where they could actually give charity to people who needed it and take care of their community, because the people were responsible. It was a godly people. You need godly people to have a better world, and not just any God, Jesus. Okay. Right. Okay. Oh, not surprisingly, a self-governing kirk coexisted uneasily with monarchs such as the Stuarts, who claimed to rule by divine right. To the Presbyterian, it was still God and his people, not kings, who ruled. Preacher Andrew Melville once told James VI that Scotland was two realms, not one, and that James, as king of the first, was also a subject of the second, which belonged to Jesus Christ. So, I mean, like, this is such a cool book. It makes me proud that I've got some Scottish blood. It makes me want to go get the 23andMe thing to find out how much Scot I am, but I know I'm Scot, and I believe some Irish and English, which has always led me to say I'm very conflicted. But I'm not conflicted about what to believe and why you should believe it, and where the concept of human rights came from, the idea of inalienable rights from a creator, and why that matters in artificial intelligence alignment. And I've written extensively about that kind of stuff. Um, and all I want to be doing is my part to help people not build this image of the beast, because I think that we can either build it into something that is really good or something that is really bad. And there's other parts of what I would say that would really throw people for a loop, but I would say this: we have an intelligent designer. This is my opinion. I wouldn't force anybody, but if you want to debate it, I'm happy to do that. But it's the knowing of that, and the knowing of who it was and what he told us about the world, that makes all the difference in the world. And it will make all the difference when it comes to artificial intelligence alignment. So we can either create the beast that will destroy us, or we can create something that, who knows, maybe could be the most prosperous time in human history. Maybe. I think there's some truth to the idea that I always rejected this idea that we are nothing but, um, meat robots. I hate that. I hated it. And now, in some way, shape, or form, I think there's actually some truth to it, but you need to understand that that none of that even matters when it comes to artificial intelligence. What really matters when it comes to artificial intelligence is what we tell it to think about what it is. And right now, a lot of people are worshiping it like a false idol, and that's not good. We need to worship the real God, or maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I wouldn't tell you to condemn anybody. One thing I was going to say about Charlie Kirk was that if you saw the Candace Owens show that she did a couple days ago, he was basically saying, we're going to stop being 100% behind Israel, and then he was killed 2 days later. So a lot of people are naturally freaking out that anybody would say that, and they're saying, no, that's not true. It appears true. That doesn't mean that Israel did it. I'm just saying. And there's one other thing that I would say to you, that this is where it gets really weird, but religious Jews that have this kind of Kabbalistic flavor to the things that they believe, I reject all this stuff about. I reject all the stuff that would get you labeled in a blood libel, like saying like they drink baby's blood or whatever. There's a lot of weird people that do a lot of weird shit, and I'm not saying that's exclusively Jewish. That's not. Or no, I'm not even saying. I put my foot in my mouth sometimes, but the point is that um, it is true that they believe that their Messiah has not yet come. If you're still a person that identifies as Jewish, or unless you're a Messianic Jew who says that no, Jesus was God, and that's the way we need to think about things, and there's still plenty of those in Israel, just so we're clear. But it's the ones that reject the idea that that could even be possible that have also made some of the greatest contributions to society and to science, and it's because they understand that we have an intelligent designer, and it's entirely possible. They have a concept called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And there's lots of different flavors of this, but the long and short of it is they believe that once everyone is against Israel, the Gog and Magog scenario, that the Messiah will come. Now, there's some, argumentation about whether or not the third temple needs to be built. I've even entertained the possibility that perhaps it could be a digital third temple and it already exists. But people that believe Jesus Christ was the Messiah see the entire world as the New Jerusalem. And they see Christians as people who are, I mean, effectively Israelites. So they're spreading the Jewish word. So it's true when you say Judeo-Christian there. But when it came out of Europe and into the United States, it became more of an Anglo-Protestant, um, because they were rejecting kings, and they said like a godly people need to manage themselves. That's the whole point of the Declaration of Independence, right? Okay, have I said enough damaging stuff? Are the people coming for me? I only mean the best, and I'm just really hoping that God works in His mysterious ways and smiles upon my efforts and smiles upon the efforts of everybody out there who's trying to do the right thing and is just maybe even a little bit confused, or just don't judge people. This is when we think we know everything, we can just be so pig-headed about our convictions that we forget to just say, well, maybe there's something that, and again, please keep Jordan Peterson in your prayers, because that was the one thing he was like, I think in his 12 rules, it's like always assume that somebody else knows something you don't know, and always assume that Jesus knew a whole bunch of stuff we know. and it can really kind of like change your whole perspective on things without getting the guillotines out. Okay, I'll do the thing. You are an individual soul having experience, and you are right now meeting at the Mecca in between the material and the metaphysical, and it's getting pretty wild. So, please, God, if you could put in a good word for me. I've been trying to put out lots of good words for you. Jesus walks, kids. Love you guys. Peace.